stay on Ellis Island?
I believe that it was. Well, they don't have beds there, do they? For the
I'm not sure.
I don't think so either. I think that they shoot them right through. In other words, they have to sit on benches till they're called, and even if they had to stay overnight, it would be to sleep on a bench,
Hmm.
just to sit on a bench with their things. They just had their little knapsack is all they had with them. They didn't bring anything else with them from Germany, just a
Her
knapsack.
parents didn't come with her?
Oh no, they had came later. She had to work and send the money back to get that, so that they could come over. Then first her two older sisters and older brother came over, and they worked. They sent money then, so she and her little brother Willie could come over. Then she came and worked with the other three, and then all five of them sent their money back to bring the rest of the family.
Hmm.
And there were three more children and mother and father. And he wanted to bring his oxen. He said he wouldn't come to America unless he could bring his oxen. So his oxen came across they took a picture of him in New York as he was coming out of Ellis Island with those oxen right there on the street. He was standing in front of his four oxen.
Hmm.
One of the children has that picture. I'd love to have a copy
Hmm.
of it. But
Do you have any poetry that you could recite? Your best poetry?
well, I wrote one about this place, you know. They have it downstairs. You can ask Aunt Elizabeth for one, and she will give it to you.
Hmm.
It's rather lengthy, but it's. Um, I think the one that I like the best is the one I wrote about my daughter about Nancy's beautiful hands. To me, that was one of my best that I thought. Of course, others might like other poetry, but you ask Aunt Elizabeth for the poem that I wrote about this, because she made a big stack of them, and people come in and ask for it all the time.
Do you have a lot of poetry your father's written?
Yes, I have.
Have they been published?
Oh, they've been in all the St. Louis papers, like the Star Times, and then of course the Star Times is no more. That's done away with. They have the Globe Democrat and the Post Dispatch, but Star Times ran his poetry, and I suppose if you could get all of his poems through the Star Times, they have a copy of all of them. But he was known as the St. Louis poet. They even let the school children out to come and view his body when he died. He was well known, well liked. And then when during the Depression, the churches, you know, they got down too. They couldn't pay their pastor, so he was very good at drafting. You know, that's why I've got two children that are architects. Terry Lee Barger that works for Starr Manufacturing Company. He's one of their top architects there. Well, my father had this ability to draw, and so they took him in the city hall, and he worked all during the Depression, laying out the streets in St. Louis and drawing the drafts for the streets and that. So I guess when you have to, you can supplement.
Hmm.
It's the person that'll just fold their hands and say, well, this is all I can do, so I can't do that. There's no job for that right now. So that's it. But see, you can do anything. I've done a little bit of everything. I've made donuts in donut factories. I worked for the telephone company as a telephone operator. Taught school. I've preached. I've been a bookkeeper for a good many years. You can just do anything if you really make up your mind to do it.
Hmm.
Sometimes even when I didn't know how to do a thing, I'd just say, well, now you just try me. And I'd watch them for just a minute, and I'd go ahead and do the best I could.
Hmm.
And eventually, well, you can do it. Of course, I've made a lot of enemies in my life because I wasn't the kind that would take coffee breaks. I never took a coffee break. I'd work for a company, stay right at my desk right through till lunch, eat my lunch, and come on back without even waiting for the hour to be up. Well, people don't like you, you know, when you do things like that. You're a square or something. But to me, I was wasting my time if I wasn't working. So I'd go back and work. And I always was well liked by my employer anyway, no one else.
Why did your father-in-law start the town of Barnhart?
He just bought up all the property down there, and then a few people came in and started, wanting to buy a little land from him, and pretty soon there was 2-3 dozen houses. And then he thought, well, there's enough houses here, let's put up a little church for them. So he built a church, and then he built a schoolhouse, and they had their own school. And then he got the railroad company to put their railroad through right in the center of town with a depot, and it was a lease. In other words, as long as the railroad used that, they could keep it, but the minute that they failed to use it for a railroad, it reverted back to the Barnharts. I could have some property down there if I went to Hillsboro and tried to find out because some of that ground surely has been reverted back to the Barnharts, and I don't know who's using it now. But when you're far away from something like that, you just let it go.
Yeah. What did Mr. Barnhart do?
You mean Carrie Lee Barnhart? Well, he had the Barnhart Mercantile Company. That was the nut company. I hate to say nuts because we handled walnuts, black walnuts, English walnuts, peanuts, pecans. I imagine he's bought many peanut from the Carter family.
Did he know Mr. Shaw? That started Shaw Gardens.
Well, we have a park there, you know, the Shaw.
Yeah, the Missouri Botanical Gardens. They started by Mr. Shaw. Did Mr. Barnhart know
Now, he could have. Now, I know that he knew Buffalo Bill well. He always called him cousin. And they used to come up there on the Barnhart Hill together, Cody and Bill Cody and my father-in-law, and sit right there. See, we had the old log cabin right next to the big new home. They built a big log cabin. It was 7 rooms and a big fireplace. And Bill Cody used to sit there and chew the rag with.
Did you know Buffalo Bill?
No, see, I was too young then. But some of the older children in the family knew him. Well, the Barnharts have had a lot of tragedy. They had 7 children, and all of them were killed in a terrible way. The first 3 died in one night with scarlet fever. They choked to death. 3 beautiful children. And then the next one was cut in 2 by a train. He was up on the hill in Barnhart, went down to catch the train, and the train had already started, and he had a date with a girl that night. That was Everett. He was 17. And he tried to pull himself up on the train, and he slipped, and he went right under it, and he cut right in 2. And then a little sister-in-law, Susan, came to... she was the only one in the family that was for Francis and I getting married, see. So she wanted to stand up for us, and she was going to get the place all ready for me to move into. She went out and took some rubbish in the backyard to burn in her. As she started in, her negligee just went over the blaze, and she burned up. I'll tell you, it was just one thing after another. It almost frightened me because every one of the Barnharts just seemed to die in some horrible way. And so then it was only my husband and my little sister-in-law Sally left. She was Sally Carter Barnhart. And
well, I'm trying to think.
Well, I've been taking up an awful lot of your time.
Oh, I've enjoyed this. I had a very good interview with you.
Well, I've enjoyed talking with you, but it's kind of reminiscing, you know. It's hard to bring things back from long ago. You want to be accurate about it, and still there are things that are a little bit vague in your mind. So the things that I'm vague about, I'd rather just let it go and not say anything about it. But I do know that I was a very happy child. The first unhappiness I'll say I had was when I lost my mother.
Yeah.
When she died, why, you pulled the rug out from under me, and I wanted to die.
Yeah. What's your favorite childhood memory?
You remember the man that was in Kentucky that was in the mines? Let's see, what was his name? Floyd Collins. Have you ever heard the song about Floyd Collins when he was? They wrote a song about him, and every newspaper in the country ran him for a month while they were trying to get him out of the mine. Well, before this happened, before he was killed, he had come to our little town in North Dakota, and he played the guitar, and I'd never heard a guitar played. And I was bringing my little wagon down the street, you know, with I just finished taking the milk around, and I heard this beautiful guitar playing, and he was singing with it at one of the neighbors' houses. So I went over and sat down on the step, and I was entranced. To me, that was the most wonderful thing that I'd ever heard, was that guitar music and that old time singing of, what were some of the songs we sang about Clementine and, the different ones. And my father and mother knew that I always came home. If I went any place, I came home right on the dot. They could set the clock. I was not the kind that would loiter or would do anything. But see, this was something that was so new to me. I forgot who I was, where I was going, or anything. I wanted to hear that music. And so my father and I heard the church bells ringing. We know whenever a tragedy happens, you ring the church bells. He says, my daughter may have been kidnapped. Said it's been 2 hours. She should have been home 2 hours ago. And I sat there 2 hours listening to that music. And it was the most beautiful thing that ever happened. And so each child and each person that came when the bell rang, they went in different directions looking for me. Well, who do you think found me? My father. He came down that street and saw me sitting there just so enraptured. So when he got me home, though, now my father was not the kind that would beat you. You know, a lot of you've heard of parents that beat their children. But their punishment was 10 times worse than any beating. You'd rather have had the strap. I had to go to bed right from the supper table for 1 full week. Right, when I'd hear the others out playing and having a good time, I had to go to bed for 1 entire week. And let me tell you, that gives you time to think. You think on yours. But it was the most enjoyable thing that ever happened to me, was to hear that music. And today now, I don't pay any attention to it. Mm-hmm. Isn't it strange? Things become so, I think that's the trouble with our young people today, and why their marriages aren't beautiful anymore, because they don't realize that there's some things you do not do until you get married. Mm-hmm. And they want to experience everything before they're married, and then all the beauty and all the loveliness of a marriage. I think a marriage is a beautiful thing. If a man and wife come together and come to each other in purity and it's lasting. I think.
Do you have any comments about your childhood or Oklahoma?
Well, I'm just glad I'm here, living here, and I'm glad I'm living in this place. Mm-hmm. There's a few little things but it has nothing to do with the management of it. I think that this place is just tops. It's just little things that among the people, that have that little jealousies and that hurt you, and But other than that, I wouldn't trade it for any place else. I'm glad I'm poor so I could live here.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.